Disclaimer. This content is a work of fiction. All characters are fictional. This story is not based on real events or actual legal proceedings. Before the gavel fell. Episode 9, Voir dire. At the bottom of the courthouse steps, just as Chris Katagis was about to turn the corner, he heard it. Chris? The voice wasn't loud. It didn't echo. It came from behind him, close enough that he hadn't heard footsteps approach. He stopped. Chris, they're ready for you. Chris turned slowly. A court officer stood near the entrance, already shifting his weight, already looking past him as if the instruction had been procedural rather than personal. Ready for what? Chris asked. The officer didn't answer. He nodded once toward the door. Chris hesitated. Moments earlier, he had walked away believing the building no longer needed him, that whatever had happened inside had already been logged, retained, absorbed. And yet here he was, being called back. No explanation, no paperwork, no correction, just readiness. Chris turned and walked back up the steps. The doors opened without resistance. Inside, the air felt different than before, not tighter, not alert, settled, as if the building had been waiting for him to change direction. A bailiff gestured down the hall without looking at him. Jury assembly, she said. Chris followed. He did not expect to be sitting there. Not because he had never imagined jury duty, but because the summons had never arrived. No envelope, no notice, no instruction. And yet he was there, seated on a hard wooden bench in a room that smelled faintly of paper, disinfectant, and something older that no one could quite name. Rows of chairs faced forward. A low murmur filled the space. Voices kept deliberately quiet. Jury assembly room. Chris read the sign twice, as if repetition might make it make sense. People around him clutched forms they had been handed at the door. Clipboards rested on laps. Pens moved slowly, hesitantly. Chris had not been given a clipboard. No one had asked his name. He noticed that first. The room was full of people trying not to stand out, people avoiding eye contact, people pretending to read pamphlets they would forget as soon as they left. Chris watched them. He felt something familiar settle in his chest. Observation. At the front of the room, a clerk stood behind a podium. She cleared her throat. "Good morning," she said. "Thank you for your patience." No one responded. "This is the jury selection process," she continued. "Some of you may be selected, some of you will not." She paused, letting the uncertainty do its work. "You will be called by name." Chris felt it then, the pause. Not dramatic, just long enough. The clerk began reading. Names echoed through the room. People stood, some relieved, some annoyed, some visibly nervous. Each time a name was called, a subtle shift followed. Expectation fulfilled or avoided. Chris waited. His name was not called, not at first. The clerk moved down her list. Chris noticed something odd. The rhythm. Every name fit the room, the cadence, the pauses, the timing. Everything flowed. Then, the clerk stopped. She looked down at her papers, frowned slightly, and turned a page. Chris felt the room tighten. "Christopher Katagis," she said, the full name. The room went quiet. Chris stood. Not because anyone told him to, because the moment required it. He waited for the clerk to ask him to confirm his identity. She didn't. She didn't look at him at all. "Proceed to courtroom 4, she said. Courtroom 4. Chris felt the words settle into place like something that had been waiting. He walked out of the room without a clipboard, without instructions, without being dismissed or acknowledged. No one stopped him. The hallway felt narrower this time. The closer he got to the courtroom, the quieter it became. Footsteps softened. Conversations disappeared. The door to courtroom 4 was open now. That was new. Inside, the room was smaller than it remembered itself being. Or maybe he was noticing details he hadn't before. The jury box sat empty. The judge's bench loomed above everything else. Chris took a seat where a bailiff gestured, though the gesture felt automatic, like a reflex rather than a command. Other prospective jurors sat nearby. They whispered to each other. Chris remained silent. A voice spoke from the front of the room. "Good morning." The judge entered and took his seat. "This is jury selection," the judge said. "Au revoir, dire." The words felt heavier than they should have. "Some of you will be asked questions," the judge continued. "Some of you will not." Chris noticed the repetition. "Your role today is simple," the judge said. Answer honestly. Honesty. Chris thought about that. The prosecutor stood. Then the defense. They began asking questions about work, about family, about opinions. The questions were ordinary. The answers were expected. Chris listened carefully. Each person was being measured, not for truth, but for fit. The questions weren't designed to reveal what people thought. They were designed to reveal whether they could be predicted. When it was Chris's turn, the courtroom felt different. The prosecutor looked at him for a moment longer than necessary. Mr. Katagis, he said, have you ever served on a jury before? No, Chris replied. Have you ever been involved in a legal proceeding? The prosecutor asked. Chris paused. The room waited. I don't know, Chris said. The prosecutor frowned slightly. You don't know? Chris met his eyes. I've been present, he said. I'm not sure if that counts. The judge leaned forward. Present how? He asked. Chris felt the weight of the room settle on him. In rooms like this, he said, now without being addressed. Silence. The defense attorney shifted in his chair. Have you formed opinions about the legal system? The prosecutor asked. Chris considered the question carefully. Yes, he said. What opinions? The prosecutor pressed. Chris exhaled slowly. That it prefers people who don't notice it, he said. The room went still. The judge cleared his throat. That will be sufficient, he said quickly. Chris sat back. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He didn't need to look. He already understood. Evaluation logged. Disposition pending. The judge looked at his notes, then up at the room. We'll take a short recess, he said. People stood. Conversations resumed in hushed tones. Chris remained seated. He realized something then. Jury selection wasn't about justice. It was about filtering, removing unpredictability, isolating variables, ensuring consistency. And Chris was none of those things. His phone vibrated again. Juror status under review. Chris smiled faintly. He had been under review for a long time. He just hadn't known what to call it. When the judge returned, he looked directly at Chris. Mr. Katagis, he said, you are excused. Excused. The word echoed strangely. Chris stood. Thank you for your time, the judge added. Chris walked out of the courtroom. No explanation, no dismissal slip, no closure. As he stepped back into the hallway, his phone vibrated one last time. Selection process complete. Observer role maintained. Exposure increased. Chris paused. Jury selection wasn't about choosing who would decide the case. It was about deciding who couldn't. And now Chris understood something clearly. The system didn't want him judging it. It wanted him watching, because watchers remember, and memory was the one thing the system could never fully control. If you enjoyed this story, consider supporting the channel by liking the video, sharing it with others who enjoy fictional court stories, and subscribing for future episodes. Thank you for listening.